tee up first? Maybe we can find out what the high screaming noise is.
The vacuum or whatever it is.
Yeah, or maybe get a door between us closing. But let's get into the two different the teasers which you guys have for your programs and what you're going to be talking about. Yeah, so why don't we talk to Sherman for a while?
Sherman Knight.
So Sherman, if I might, tell us what it is that your program's going to be, and who you think would benefit from coming, and what you think they're going to come away with.
So I was at a meeting with Sherman while we're getting this, maybe the noise is going to get calmed down. I was at a meeting with Sherman and he was telling me about an article that he wrote, and it just sounded great. And he was clearly very animated and excited about this article and the email he had been receiving from people who had read it, with whom it really resonated. So I said, Sherman, you should present that at the conference.
It's been interesting. I've been contacted by different attorneys from 7 different states wanting to publish the article in their state bar magazine. So something here touched a nerve with a lot of people, especially other attorneys. The name of my presentation is I Was Sued and I Didn't Like It. It's a pretty simple concept, but...
Is this like the anti-Katy Perry thing? I don't know. It
could be. Okay. Could be. It was, people would ask me at dinner parties, people I didn't know, what do you do for a living? And I would look at them and go, well, I make people's lives miserable. And they would go, you're an attorney. You know, I never really realized what miserable really meant. I'd been practicing law for 2.5 decades, and I've never really gotten into the mind of the people that I represented. I really didn't understand what the word miserable meant. And then it happened. I got sued. We were doing a remodel on our house, and I had hired a friend of mine to come out and take a look at it, make sure the builder was doing the right job. And he calls me up and he goes, man, you got some problems. He gives me the list, and the next day we talk with the builder. Here's what you need to fix, and we're not going to pay any more money until you get it fixed. It's the middle of October, and we don't have a roof on it yet. Needless to say, the builder walked off the site. About 2 weeks later, a week after that, I got a lawsuit for a lien foreclosure and what they want, $54,000 or something like that. You know, I looked at it and thought, we're going to cream this guy. I got a pretty good expert. I do this kind of work for a living. I know what's going to happen. So I just kind of wrote it off. Then they served my wife at work. Things changed a lot after that. My wife comes home and she doesn't ask if we're going to win or lose. She comes home and goes, so if we lose, what's it going to cost? I said, well, we got to pay our attorney, and we're going to have to pay their attorney, have to pay them the $54,000, and then we have to spend the money out of our pocket to fix all the mistakes that he made. So a couple $100,000. Well, she freaked. Our relationship soured as kind of the lawsuit went on for the next 2.5 years. Our relationship didn't get any better throughout that period of time. I didn't get it. As I got closer and closer to trial, all of a sudden I started doubting my own case. Am I really doing the right thing? I've been in the courtroom and I've seen judges come up with rulings that are just, where did that come from? I've had clients that tell me stories, and when I sit down and talk to the other side, their story's completely different. I've never understood how a judge that hears 2 completely different stories figures out which one to believe. So as I'm getting closer and closer to trial, I'm doubting my case more and more. It's keeping me up at night. I'm waking up in the middle of the morning with bad dreams. As we get closer and closer to it, I start thinking about, what if the judge doesn't believe me? What if he doesn't like the tie that my expert's wearing? What if? I was shocked at how miserable I was. I never realized it before. What do they teach you in law school? What do your mentors tell you? Tell your client to treat it like a business decision. Yeah, right. It doesn't work that way. I was shocked. I realized later that we had everything we needed to do an early mediation on this case. In the end, after 2.5 years, the insurance company wound up writing us a check for a pretty good amount of money. But it didn't take the sting away. It still took 6 or 7 months before my wife quit thinking about it. That part of the misery is something I never understood. So in law school, excuse me, in law school, they teach you to be a forensic thinker. Absolutely everything. They teach you to leave no stone unturned. You combine forensic thinking with no stone unturned, and it's ka-ching, ka-ching, ka-ching. It's a lot of money. But that's how law school teaches us to look at the problem. When we first walk out as practicing attorneys, we go to work for another attorney. That's how they teach us to practice law. We listen to the seminars from the insurance companies, and they tell us if you don't turn every stone, if you don't ask every question, you're opening yourself up to a malpractice lawsuit. So when I thought about it in hindsight, there was a problem. So as a mediator, I started working more and more for early mediations. How do we get this thing on track so that we can get this thing into an earlier mediation? Now, this is a lot different than what King County tried years ago, where within so many days of filing a lawsuit, thou shalt go to mediation. Frankly, I don't think those work very well. It's more of a structured mediation where the mediator gets involved early on and helps the parties set up limits on discovery, helps explain to the clients that, yeah, you might be giving up certainty in exchange for a lot less misery and keeping a lot more of your own money. It's an interesting discussion that a lot of clients early on, they don't want to hear. But it doesn't take them very long to convince them to do that. We've done a lot of different cases with early mediation. We've done a $20 million case that between the time of filing the lawsuit and settlement was just a couple of days over 4 months. There are ways to do it, but it requires somebody to come in and structure part of it. If you have two attorneys that have been around the block that respect each other, they disagree with each other, but they respect each other, you know what? They'll find a way to get the information passed back and forth. But if you're dealing with an attorney, especially one that has not met the 10,000-hour rule, yeah, often make them a good offer. They don't know if it's a good offer or not. They just don't know. Mediating a case like that is really difficult. So early mediation involves somebody like me getting involved, sitting down with the parties and making sure that they've developed a claim both from liability and, more importantly, from damages, so that we know where the money is. Because in every case out there, I don't care what they teach in law school, the sexy side of law, all about liability. But when it comes right down to it, it's all about the money. And that's it. And there's exactly one class in law school that teaches the money, and that's remedies. And almost nobody takes it.
Okay.
So one of the things you have to do in early mediation is you have to get the parties to figure out how much, what's it worth, and why. And you got to get them to do it quickly, which means they can't turn every stone. If they want to do it forensically, it's not going to happen. The client has to be willing to give up certainty in exchange for getting it done. And then you might have another session with the same parties if there's some discovery issues down the road. But this $20 million case was done with 4 depositions. Everybody had the paperwork. Everybody knew what was going on. That's all that it took. So there are ways to make early mediation happen. It's not just the clock is ticking, we have 3 months. You have to go through a process so that the mediation can be successful. If people just show up, it doesn't have much of a chance. But early mediation, it's a good deal. There are a lot of cases out there that we'll talk about more at the conference that deal with certain types of cases that are just, my God, they're made for early mediation. And we'll go over some of those details and talks about some of those things. Is that what you're looking for?
Well, I was just going to say. So you've taken this experience of personal pain and turned it into something which made a real difference, and for you is a very specific approach in the way that you're approaching a mediation, and that's what the conference presentation is going to cover and explore and flesh out in more detail.
I hope so.
Okay.
It is. I've been excited enough about this concept that I'm trying to push for early mediation that I shut my law practice down. I'm having a lot of fun doing this other stuff. My success rate's really high if I can get the people to work through this process. But the benefit is your client's miserable, but not for very long. Yeah, clients don't get really miserable until the second year of a 3-year process. So if you're done in 4 months, they really haven't had a chance to be miserable.